Brace for impact.
Welcome to the 14th episode of Brace for Impact, covering all things Impact Wrestling, live from No South Studios. I'm the Ace of Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined on this Thursday evening by @mullet.mania, Colton Jesse. What's up, dude?
What's going on, brother? Man, night 2 of the 1,000 episode celebration. It's a great show.
Split it right in half, 500 on each side, and 1,000 episode was, it felt like some of the bloom was off the rose. The celebration felt like it happened, but this was the party, the extension, the after party, if you will. It was nice to see that they jam-packed so much into those White Plains tapings, and I'm looking forward to what's next, but this was a nice culmination of what was a celebration in Queens last week.
Absolutely, man. I thought it was a pretty good mix. You know, when you get into these big milestone shows, you can lose a little bit of the weekly storyline and the development. And I think between the last 2 weeks, I thought we got a nice balance of continuation of storylines we've been seeing from week to week, and kind of a nod to the impact in TNA that was, and the legends and current talent alike.
And while I am happy about the celebration and stuff, I agree with you. I'm ready to get back to our sequential TV show where it's about the match quality and building towards what is the biggest show of the year, Bound for Glory. This was one of those pit stops, but I think they did a good job of celebrating the past and also recognizing the future and the present. And we saw kind of a mixed bag of all those things throughout the 2 episodes. And I have to say, I really think that last week, the first half was a better version of this card. But this had a lot of steam to it, and I can imagine that everyone that was in attendance in White Plains probably felt like they witnessed something special. But nothing's really going to top that Sabin and Leo Rush match that ended the first half of it, and that was the right call to have it on the official 1,000th episode of weekly TV. But there's a lot of good stuff happening here as we approach, like we said, Bound for Glory, which is only a few weeks away.
Yeah, man, it's going to be October 21st. Will be here before we know it. The biggest show of the year, and it just keeps getting better. What they announce, we'll get into it tonight when the match is announced. But Chicago's only 5 hours up the road for me, man. I'm getting very tempted. There's still GA tickets available, so for a very fair price, I might add.
So I want to welcome Rock'em Sock'em Wrestler back into the chat. 1,000 episodes of Brace for Impact with Ace and Colton. Please and thanks. Let's go. Thank you for watching, Rock'em Sock'em Wrestler. We appreciate the support. And Colton, like you said, getting in the car, the card alone, we'll get into some of the stuff they announced. And why even bury the lead here? Will Ospreay versus Mike Bailey is enough to get anyone in a car and drive any length of distance. And if it's within kind of a stone's throw of you, why not, dude? Just hop in there, general admission, grab a beer, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, man, especially after, we were hoping that we were supposed to get that match at Multiverse United 2 and did not work out. It's everybody's still been longing for it. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to pass it up.
Yeah, Mike Bailey is one of those guys I circled to have probably Wrestler of the Year in 2023. I don't think it really circled that. It's kind of funny that it wound up being Will Ospreay take the shine away from him. But Mike Bailey, if you guys are sleeping on Mike Bailey, you're living under a rock, because that dude and Will Ospreay are going to tear it up. And we're going to get a couple months of throwing some darts at a board to try to top that Omega Ospreay double match that we had over the course in this year. Obviously, the first of the year, and then in June as well. Not a lot of matches can do that, but maybe Mike Bailey and Will Ospreay can work up some magic at Bound for Glory and maybe take the crown of match of the year that everyone thinks is presumptuous going to be on top of Omega and Ospreay. We'll see. I doubt it because of all the things that went into Wrestle Kingdom and Forbidden Door, but I give Mike Bailey a lot of credit. He can try.
Oh, absolutely, man. I've been lucky enough to see the guy live 2 or 3 different times, and yeah, he's incredible. If you get an opportunity, if Mike Bailey's ever in your backyard, make sure you go.
With that being said, let's get to the inside, talk about the news of the week. We have some good stuff to talk about here as we kind of get ready for what's going to be turning the page. We move past the celebration and what happens after a party. It's the cleanup, and let's get into the inside.
The inside.
So as we move past the 1,000th episode and we look forward to Bound for Glory, of course, we still have these double tapings that are taking place, and we have one on deck for the next weekend because the White Plains ones are ended, and we have yet to have the results of the ones happening this weekend. And make sure you guys stay tuned because tomorrow we have Impact Wrestling in Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee, and we have some matches on deck. And most notably was there's 2 nights of tapings, as we mentioned, Friday and Saturday, like they usually stagger. And this will change going forward, guys. And we talked about this with the production value. They're going to limit the tapings, and maybe they're going to have less shows. It's going to be interesting to see how they stagger it. But for as of right now, this is the traditional way Impact's been taping over the past couple of years. And we have a stipulation match has been confirmed for this weekend's Impact Wrestling television tapings in Memphis. So we have ABC, which is Ace Austin and Chris Bay, taking on the Good Hands, John Schuyler and Jason Hotch. And they crown this with a strap match stipulation. And this event, we have these kind of catch-all Chicago Mayhem or Summer Blast or whatever you want to call it. This one in Tennessee is being called Mid-South Mayhem. And they're going to be held at Graceland Live Friday, September 22nd and Saturday, September 23rd. And Austin and Bay, we know they're former tag champs, and they were champs from February to July. This is a big test for John Schuyler and Jason Hotch, which to me, this is the match everyone's circling to see. There's some other good stuff which we'll cover, but your thoughts on the strap match between two really great tag teams?
Man, I think this is going to steal the show for sure. And I like calling it Mid-South Mayhems. Nice nod to the territory days of Memphis and Mid-South Wrestling. Memphis is a great town, and I'm really excited to see this payoff between these two teams because we've been seeing a lot of, I mean, for lack of a better term, pissing and moaning from Schuyler and Hotch about how they need a shot and they deserve a shot, especially for the, couple of times that they've helped out the Rascals on their journey to being the Impact Tag Team Champions. So I'm excited to see the talk and stop and getting into it in the ring.
So you mentioned the Rascals. They'll be defending their tag titles during this taping as well. We don't know what night or what week they're going to be on Impact TV. Of course, we'll get clarification probably after the tapings, but Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz are defending against Rich Swann and Sami Callihan at the first night of the taping. So that's going to be happening tomorrow night. And the rest of the card looks like this. So tomorrow, if you guys are in Memphis looking to check out what's happening in Graceland, as I mentioned, we have the Impact Tag Team Championship on the line. The Rascals taking on Rich Swann and Sami Callihan. We also have a Memphis street fight, which is Tommy Dreamer and Heath teaming up against Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. We get Speedball Mike Bailey versus Samurai Del Sol. And of course, we mentioned before, as the stipulation stated, the Memphis strap match, ABC versus the Good Hands. So that's the first night of tapings. And on night 2, which is going to be the next night on September 23rd, we have 4 matches on deck. Trinity and Mickie James teaming up to take on Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans. Josh Alexander is going to be taking on Yuya, which is interesting because we saw what happened this week. And we'll talk about that in 1 second. Speedball Mike Bailey is not done working back-to-back nights, taking on John Gresham, which is sure to be an awesome match. We've seen them work frequently together and even tag together. And then we have Tasha Steelz taking on Killer Kelly. So, Colton, I pass it on to you. What do you think is the better night of tapings? And your thought on Yuya, who was just fired in the Feast or Fired briefcases being advertised for a match against Josh Alexander?
Yeah, hard to say, man. I think they're both pretty stacked nights of tapings. I mean, the strap match, I think, is going to be really, really good to see. Like I said, first time we've seen the Good Hands in action in a while. Always love seeing, the ABC in action. But I got to say, Speedball versus Gresham, I'm really excited about. We set that up tonight. I do think it's really interesting that we see Yuya mentioned on this card because for those of you that were watching last week with us, we had the Feast or Fired match with the briefcases, and we threw some predictions out. I predicted that Yuya was going to pull the pink slip, which he did, that we saw tonight. So I mean, it does say we saw tonight at the end of the show that next week would be his goodbye ceremony, but that would in my mind be night 1 of tapings, and it looks like it's going to be night 2 that he's going up against Josh Alexander. So there's got to be some sort of shenanigans coming up where maybe I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it looks like he gets to stay on. So, I mean, I think that'll be a great match either way. So excited to see it. Maybe Santino comes out and says, hey, you got one more match. If you can beat Josh Alexander, you can keep your contract. I can't say that I see him beating Josh Alexander, especially with Josh on his way to, the match has been set in stone now. We know that we're going to definitely get Shelley versus Alexander at Bound for Glory. Not that a loss necessarily hurts Alexander, but I don't see them giving him one on the way there.
Yeah, with 4 words we are familiar with, card subject to change. So it's possible they had this circled as a match they're advertising, and maybe we see someone slot in for Josh Alexander during these tapings. And the other interesting thing is going to be how they're staggered. Of course, we saw the jam-packed, double-stuffed, if you will, tapings in White Plains and Queens that were just over the top. There was so much happening. We didn't know what was what. But with these tapings, it's not necessarily going to be night one is going to be next week's show.
Fair enough.
They set up Speedball Mike Bailey versus John Gresham, even though they're taping that on Saturday. Feels like that's set up to happen next Thursday. And we usually get what the cards look like, on impactwrestling.com a couple days in advance. So we'll know how they're splicing up these tapings. But what we do know, it's a tough gig for the editing team. They have to go in there and splice it up. It's not just streamlined like, all right, night one is going to be Thursday and night two is going to be the Thursday after that. They split it up, man. And that's what we've been doing. We saw even tonight, the 10-man tag or 10-woman tag that main evented, that didn't happen last. Like that was kind of smack dab in the middle of the card, in the middle of the night. And I don't know, the crowd definitely has this weird feel for it when you watch in tape. And I understand that they have to do it the way they do it, but splicing up the card, I mean, it was very obvious when Ring of Honor was doing it because of the arena around them and AEW. Sometimes, like, it was very obvious when they were taping it. With Impact, it's less obvious, but still, like, some of the buzz is off of the match. For a main event match, you want that exact buzz. And Sabin and Leo Rush had it. That was a main event match. But this 10-woman tag, I feel like could have had a little bit more buzz, but it felt like the fans were almost conserving energy for the rest of the night.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I watched that 10-woman tag. It's hard to, if you don't end with your main event, obviously when you're pre-taping, you're going to switch things up, you're going to move things around, but it's a good strategy to have the last match of the show be the main event, regardless of, whether you're going to air that the following week or the week after, because the energy of the crowd's always going to be hot for the main event. So yeah, be interesting to see how these play out and see which order we get things coming Thursday and next.
And there's certainly something to be said about Trinity and Mickie James teaming up, because we had Mickie James, speaking in an interview with Wrestling News about working programs and staying in Impact Wrestling, her legacy and all that. But most notably, she talked about working with Trinity. So Mickie James, like I said, spoke on an interview with Wrestling News, and she said that, about Trinity coming in and running the Knockouts division while she's gone. And she said, we've never had a singles match. A lot of times we were on two different shows, so we would only see each other on pay-per-views. I want this one-on-one match. I've been feeling good for a while, but I also sat back and I've truly been enjoying her run as champion. She continued, I've truly, as a sister and a friend, have been loving all these moments and seeing her get this opportunity and doing exactly what I knew she would do, and that's shine. She continues heaping compliments on Trinity, and well-deserved. We know Trinity has been running this Knockouts division at the top for quite some time, since winning the title over at Slammiversary from Deonna Purrazzo. But to me, Colton, and we'll talk about what else she said about teaming with her and what their aspirations and that, this for me feels like it's going to be Mickie James versus Trinity at Bound for Glory. Am I wrong here?
I don't think you're wrong, man. Not that it surprised anybody, but tonight with the 10-woman tags, the first time we've seen Mickie James in an Impact ring in quite some time, and she looked incredible. She didn't miss a beat. Doesn't look like she's got any ring rust whatsoever. One of the greatest in women wrestling, period. Time in WWE and Impact alike. I think it's be a real missed opportunity to not get Mickie James versus Trinity. And like we said, the 21st of October, we're a month away today. As of right now, we are 30 days away from this show. And, they haven't really started, they haven't built anything as far as a main program for Trinity going into this. So, and maybe we see them have a tag team match or two in the week or so, and maybe there's some miscommunication or some lack of synergy between the two of them, and that sets them up for a feud. But yeah, I think that would be a great main event for the women's division.
So obviously we're seeing them teaming on night two of these tapings in Graceland, but Trinity and her, they both believe they could be solid Knockouts tag team champions. And Mickie said in this interview, now that I've sat back and feel maybe she's running out of competition, maybe it's time for a match that both of us want, the people want, and that they've never seen. If I'm going to test myself and go after it again, anyone as a wrestler walking into the wrestling television company, if you're not vying to be champion, what are you doing? I like being champion. It feels good and I enjoy it. I love seeing my friends shine, but I sat back and watched her glow this whole time and I was getting a little antsy. I also think Trinity and I as tag team champions, we could rule the world. But we do know, Colton, like the story's there. Mickie James is forced to relinquish the title similar to Josh Alexander due to injury. And that eventually has to be paid off, whether it's going to be building up further who Trinity is as champion or letting Mickie James have another run. It would not shock me to see Mickie James as Knockouts champion again. And we know her legacy there. We know the fact that, as a person that's been running that division and the impact, for lack of a better word, that she's had on women's wrestling, I think you have to do this program. And we were talking off air, Bound for Glory is their WrestleMania. And I don't know if there's a bigger matchup that's in the docket. Like, who else could you pull out of the pool and build up against Trinity aside from Mickie James? I mean, we saw all the legends in the ring. No one shined brighter to me than Mickie James and Trinity in that ring in the 10-woman tag. And you may have to pull the trigger because, it sounds like a headlining money. And this is what Mickie said in the interview. Sounds like money. And I think that's the match you go with. And we know how important women's wrestling is for. It's quite clear it was so important to them in this 1,000th episode to celebrate it. It feels like the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, it seems like the easy decision to make. And I like the idea of having both of the world titles, the Knockouts title and the Impact World Championship, being the challengers are both folks that had to lay the title down due to injury. They never lost the belt, so they've got that chip on their shoulder and also that, right to have another shot at it because they never lost it. I like that aspect for both belts.
So we'll certainly see where they go. I think as wrestling fans, we know what happens usually when two competitive main eventers are teaming together. It eventually ends in angst between both of them. And maybe we see a heel turn from Mickie James. Maybe we see a heel turn from Trinity. Who knows? Maybe they go in face versus face into this match eventually, whether it's at Bound for Glory or elsewhere. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see them team for a little bit, maybe even challenge, MK Ultra for those Knockouts Tag Team Championship. Maybe they'll go after the belts, but yeah, I think eventually it's going to get here. And like we keep saying, the biggest show of the year, you kind of have to throw your biggest match at it. And Mickie James is entitled to a rematch. She never lost the title cleanly. Same thing with Josh Alexander. It just seems like you could go all these side paths and get to whatever story you want to go to, but the story has to be finished with Mickie James. Whether you decide to put the title on or not, you have to tie up that loose end because people are always going to be wondering what if, even if they're teaming together. You have to kind of write off the rest of the story. It's always out there, especially when they're active on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And either way they go with it is going to be good. Like you said, I like the idea. I think Mickey's got a lot left in the tank. Could definitely see another run in her, but also, Trinity would be a really nice notch in Trinity's belt to get a definitive win over a legend like Mickie James.
So our final piece of news here in the Insight was Jeff Jarrett, and we know Jeff Jarrett has his podcast with Conrad called My World, if you listen to it, and he was talking, he mentions Impact here and there, and he'll talk about current day product, but he was asked an interesting question, which I'm curious to get your thought on this, and he was asked how he would book a TNA one-night stand type of show in 2023, and of course, you guys are not familiar with that concept, but ECW one-night stand was, back when ECW was, sort of revived by WWE. It started with the one-night stand for the Celebration Hammerstein Ballroom that wound up being two of them. Had me thinking about what a reunion would be. And if right now, obviously TNA is at the forefront of your mind because of this 1,000th episode. We've been seeing clips all over the place, but I put the eras of Impact Wrestling in different boxes. Of course, NWA TNA, then you have the TNA Total Nonstop Action era, and then now Impact is completely different. I almost don't even view them as the same promotion. I'm not sure if everybody feels that way, but to me, they feel like they're completely different. I know the history's there, but they just completely feel different. And if you're looking at TNA One Night Stand and thinking about the legacy of obviously like Abyss, like characters like Raven, not that he could still go, but that's the TNA I remember. But the quote was interesting that Jeff Jarrett said, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. He said, if the Fairgrounds Arena, which they tore down to build the soccer stadium, was still open, that would be natural. I think you go to the Impact Zone, but you couldn't monetize it. Many people are unaware, but we did episodes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 and 10 in the Municipal Auditorium, the scene of Ric Flair's last match. I just think the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville would probably be the best location and monetize it best, maybe market it best. He continues, the Impact Zone is near and dear to my heart, but it's much harder and much lower gross. I'll also go with the Municipal Auditorium. So a venue is important. Like Hammerstein Ballroom, it wouldn't have felt the same if you decide to run, a hockey arena for the ECW. It had to be the feel. And I think, to me, like if you're going to run a TNA one-night stand type of show, it has to be at a place that feels like TNA where it was, and that's the Impact Zone, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Municipal Auditorium in Nashville. I saw Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper there in 2010. Quite a show. Halloween Hootenanny, good time. But yeah, it's I had to go. I had to visualize the back of that T-shirt to remember what year it was. I still have it. But yeah, I mean, also the arena there at the fairgrounds, man, that takes me back as well. Did a number of award tours there at the Nashville Fairgrounds. So um, yeah, I mean, I think that would be a perfect spot for it. That'd be really. I'm actually really excited by the idea. I mean, I know they're just fantasy booking here, but sign me up, pal. I would 100% buy tickets to a TNA one night stand in Nashville.
So there's obviously the venue is one piece, but then the talent's the other. And he talked about some of the matches he would book. And this is from Jeff Jarrett's mind. This is all hypothetical, guys. So it's not like it's happening. But he said, Conrad, on that, just to me, we've talked about it. I think there's the TNA years, which are much different than the Impact years. And then you get into we'll call it the Corrigan years and the Anthem years and blah, blah, blah. So the TNA years, you got to go with Kurt. You got to go with AJ. I know Bobby Roode injury wise, but Bobby Roode and Eric Young, Chris Harris and James Storm. And he continues, okay, so you said 3 matches, AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels versus Samoa Joe. That was the first exhibition, the main event, a pay-per-view. I think that's there. I think you could probably do that, something along the line of America's Most Wanted, Motor City Machine Guns versus the Young Bucks. And he continues talking about talent like Elix Skipper. He also talked about referencing some talent like Road Dogg, R-Truth, and Conan, some on the card. And then, the legacy of Christian, Abyss, Jeff Jarrett, and all that stuff, and maybe having a King of the Mountain match. If you put just the TNA years in a box, it'd be interesting to see what you get, like an AI generated card with those guys, to see what it would look like. I mean, obviously people have to be able to wrestle to do that type of stuff. And when we had the ECW One Night Stand card come to us and we had the ability to watch it, it was in the perfect sweet spot. A lot of these guys were able to still be active. The company had only shut down probably 4 years prior. So 4 years and a lot of these guys stayed active and they were all involved in the card in a big way. I think we're almost too far away from those TNA days for any of these guys to even have meaningful matches outside of Motor City Machine Guns and the Young Bucks. I mean, we have Joe and Daniels, but they're locked up elsewhere. I mean, if AEW wants to play ball, but it's all hypothetical. It's fun to think about, but I don't know if we'll ever see something like this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, if being locked up with another company wasn't an issue, I mean, it'd be incredible to see AJ Styles. He's suffered his first injury of his career that has actually sidelined him for the first time in his 40s in the last year and a half. So I mean, he's definitely still got it. I'd love to see him have it, but at WWE, I'd say they're not going to let that happen whatsoever. But I mean, at the same time, they let Team 3D wrestle on the most of the thousands episode right after signing a Legends deal. I mean, I'm sure that was Bully Ray and Devon being like, hey, we have this commitment prior, but like we said, I mean, with Endeavor acquisitioning WWE and TKO becoming a thing, maybe things are different now. But it's always fun to fantasy book, man. This could be a really fun card potentially.
And the other thing, if you guys ever have the dissatisfaction of having to read a Jeff Jarrett quote, it's almost, I mean, you're looking at the notes here that I have this quote, and it's all broken up sentences. And I think it actually captures the podcast where he speaks in abbreviated thoughts. There's never one fluid sentence. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You got things in here. It looks like it's almost like someone had a ransom letter and they just pieced together letters on top of a paper. But I do enjoy, I mean, there's episodes of My World that I enjoy. I'm not sure how you feel about Jeff Jarrett or his podcast or whatever his legacy is. I do enjoy it, especially when they talk about current day stuff. And I do appreciate that they don't shy away from it. They talk about the Punk stuff head on. And Jarrett works for AEW, so that's got to be challenging. But I give him credit because most podcasts will move away from that.
I like Double J a lot, and yeah, he's very much stream of consciousness, man. There's no just reading over this at the end. He's like, yeah, the King of the Mountain match, yes, Sting, yeah. It's like it's all very just the first word that hits his lips, man, is what comes out. But no, I'm a big fan of Double J, and like you said, I enjoy when they talk current stuff too.
So let's get to the blow by blow and talk about the second half of the tapings from White Plains at the Westchester County Center. Aired on AXS, but let's get to blow by blow.
Blow by blow.
All right, here we are with the second half of the 1000th episode, and it's White Plains, New York at the Westchester County Center. Commentators Tom Hannafin, Matthew Raywald. We get some highlights, great production from last week, showing us all the happenings and all the great pomp and circumstance from the first half of the tapings. And we open up, Colton, with Ultimate X. And we have Rich Swann, Samurai Del Sol, Alan Angels, Zachary Wentz, Speedball Mike Bailey, and Ace Austin taking on each other. And we know this match determines a new number one contender for the X Division Championship. And we know the concept. The first wrestler to grab the Giant X, hang in the ring, brings it to the mat, wins it. It's a classic ladder match concept, hanging in the air, except we have all the ropes or whatever you want to call them, wires holding up the X in the middle. So this match was pretty quick, man. I mean, I expected a little bit more time given to this. We got 9 minutes, but I'll let you break it down and talk about it. Thought there was some good, exciting moves. I mean, nothing over the top. I understand it's a weekly TV tape. They're not going to go crazy. But I remember when the Ultimate X matches were just absolutely insane. This wasn't that, but it was still athletic and fun.
Yeah, this was a good time and a fun way to open up the show. I was right there with you, man. I expected this to get closer to 20 minutes. I mean, the last time that we saw one at a pay-per-view, that's about what we got, but they still packed a lot in here in 9 minutes. It was pretty much anybody's game. I will say I was a little worried that Zachary Wentz was going to spray paint his way to getting a hold of the Giant X, because, man, he just can't seem to go anywhere without that paint can. But one of the coolest things that we saw, man, was Mike Bailey got awful close. So he at one point he's up on these ropes, and you've got a Del Sol, and then also Alan Angels up there shaking the top ropes, trying to knock everybody off of him. Mike Bailey's got some serious kung fu grip going on, because he held on, and then he gets to the center, and brother actually tried to unhook the X off the carabiner with his toes, which I've never seen before.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I was like, if anybody can do it, it's Mike Bailey. But, shenanigans coming in from Wentz and everybody else involved. Alan Angels gets the win here, man, which was cool to see for me, because last Ultimate X match we had, that's who I had picked to win it. Kushida ended up getting it there. But he dropped it on the way down, and Mike Bailey made a pounce for it, but Angels was just closer to it and quickly recovered. So excited to see, we're not going to waste any time here. Alan Angels, as soon as he got backstage, they had a camera in his face, and he called Chris Sabin out for next week. So excited to see that match. I can't say that I see Chris Sabin dropping it on his first defense for his 10th run by any means, but either way, should be a good match between him and Alan Angels.
So with that being said, we know that it's going to happen in Graceland. Obviously, they couldn't advertise it, so maybe that's going to be the match that replaces the Josh Alexander and Yua match. Maybe they find a different way to place it on there. But as you said, the X Division Championship will be on the line. And, I mean, there's, 0.00001% chance that Alan Angels wins the championship. But the same could be said that Ray Phoenix had the same amount of chance to win the international championship. And, wrestling is wrestling sometimes, and things happen. And this will be a cool match. And my main thing I want to come out of this, not only the Ultimate X, but also the title shot against Chris Sabin, is I want Alan Angels to pull himself from the pack. I feel like he's right there, ready to bust through, ready to kind of just step above that second layer of mid-card and Impact. He's not quite there. He feels like just another one of those guys, but this is a big win when you're looking at matches filled with a former world champion. You have former tag team champions in there. Speedball Mike Bailey, as we're talking about it. Samurai Del Sol, although he hasn't accomplished anything in the Impact reign so far, he's former U.S. champion in WWE. So there's a lot to be said about the guys that he beat. Now it's a matter of doing something with it. And there's a lot you can do in losing effort. You don't have to be Chris Sabin you don't have to go over to get over. That's the old adage. So I'm interested to see where they go with this. It feels like he's always kind of stop-start. I want to see Alan Angels be pushed and give good reason for why he chose to stay in Impact over maybe going back to AEW, because I think this is the best suited for him, and we're going to probably see the best version of him against Chris Sabin. At least he'll have the opportunity to show it at least.
I think so, and especially in a match with Chris Sabin, he's definitely going to get a hell of a rub from this match. Just being able to hold his own and go the distance with Sabin is going to elevate Alan Angels in the eyes of a lot of fans. And also, too, he's kind of been in this in between, like, I'm kind of a heel, I'm kind of not. Sometimes I cheat, sometimes I don't, since he's left the design. So I'm hoping he finds himself a little bit more as a respectable competitor in this match with Sabin, and because I think I think he's got a baby face run in him if he can figure out who and what he is.
Do you think this is course correcting for the Kushida thing, or do you think the Kushida thing was always? I mean, I think it was their decision, obviously, but do you think that they maybe had a regret about not pulling the trigger on Allen Angels? Because you and I spoke on the Slammiversary build all the way those months back that we thought Angels were going to be the guy coordinated, and it went to Kushida, where ultimately we got those mini programs leading into it. It was fun with him and Leo Rush, but maybe Allen Angels was the guy who needed, and they're trying to rewrite that right now and let him get the momentum from this.
Could be. I mean, I think it made sense too that Kushida got it as well. I mean, I think it could have been a toss up between who needed it more at that point in time. So yeah, I think maybe I don't know if it's necessarily a course correction, but I'm glad to see that Impact staff and writers were all in agreement that Allen Angels was the next guy and needing that shot.
Absolutely. And I think this was the right decision. If you look at all the guys on this card that could have done it, they're involved in other things. And I think this is the right person. This division should be eventually Allen Angel's division once the torch is ready to be handed to him. I think he could be the next era of the X division. I really believe that. I know that's high praise, but there's something special in Allen Angels. I think we see it in starts and spurts. I don't think we've seen it fully realized yet, but I think we will. And like I keep saying, I mean, the dance partner being Chris Sabin, if you don't show out here in a match and get yourself over and be the ultimate underdog by just almost conquering Chris Sabin, who's the greatest X Division champion of all time, held the damn title 10 times. That this is an opportunity for him, and there's a lot of pressure on him. I really think there's a lot of pressure for him when he takes on Chris Sabin for this title, and obviously he's losing, but there's a way to get over and be remembered and hopefully take the next step so they know he's next in line.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but I think he's going to be able to handle it, and I'm really, really looking forward to this one next week.
So we have Jake Something taking on Dirty Dango with Alpha Bravo, and before we have this, we have Chase Stevens, which is formerly of the Naturals tag team, shown in the back as a judge. And they said this was a 10-minute time limit. They had a clock in the corner for all of it. And this was contested under, quote, Fox Box rules. And this is supposed to be in the days where Impact aired on FSN. So they were trying to make sure they're paying homage to that time. We saw highlights of that which is such a weird time. I know there was like no HD, but even like the format where it looked like a sporting event, it was like any local hockey game where you would see on the old school, the FSN stuff. I just remember like the Florida Panthers would play in FSN. So you'd see like the same top. Seeing wrestling presenting it as a sport was interesting. And that era of Impact or TNA was not as remembered, but seeing those highlights last week and even this week was interesting. Before we get in the match, your thoughts on their time in FSN and some of the highlights they were showing?
I mean, it was definitely an odd time. We talk all the time about Impact and TNA's history and how many different networks they've bounced around and how many different places you had to go to watch it. I liked this nod. I thought it was cool to see that and have the banner running at the top and the bottom of the screen while the match was going on. I was kind of interested in why they chose this match for it, maybe because it was going to end up being short. But right. I definitely, in the first few minutes of the match, was like, man, I kind of wish I had all of my screen to see Dango and Jake Something going at it. But I do, especially with being the 1000th episode, I think it's important that, especially where they're going with this new investment in production quality and equipment, and it's important to remember where you came from and to pay homage to that, especially on the 1000th episode. I thought it was cool.
And so Dango got on the mic before the match and he did his thing where he just says he hates pro wrestling, which is amazing. It's such a good gimmick. It's so meta, and I think Dirty Dango is doing some of the best work of his career here. And we say it every week. I want to heap the praise on Dirty Dango because it would be so easy to do the nostalgia run and do the things that we're familiar with and be the XWB guy, but he's trying his best to establish himself outside of that. And I give him a lot of credit, but we see him trying to escape Jake Something. We know he's unstoppable. This guy's a monster. Dango tried to walk out early. Jake brought him back in the ring. Dango got a couple of offensive moves in, making a comeback. Jake fought back. And then we got some apron stuff going on where Jake knocked Dango off the apron. Bravo gets involved, causing some chaos at ringside. And Dango attacked Jake from behind, thinking that he's going to get one over. We think maybe we're going to have Jake Something lose here with the momentum being built up. But Bravo, they had some miscommunication. He accidentally hit Dango with the flashlight. And then Jake got the Into the Void for the pin, 4 minutes in. So Jake something gets the win, not as dominant as I thought it would have been, which shows me a little bit more of what they think of Dirty Dango and the heel character. They want to keep him looking like he's some formidable force. Of course, he's not going to be pushed to the top of the card. They didn't feed him to Jake something. Although this was short, this was not a squash.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought this was a pretty even match for the most part, a little bit more so than I thought it would be. Shorter than I thought it was going to be too, right at 4 minutes. But man, that Into the Void finisher is just powerful. And I think that that's going to be a very protected finisher in Impact going forward. I don't think we're going to see, especially as we continue to see Jake getting a little bit more of a push. I don't see anybody kicking out of that move.
I agree with you. I thought the same thing. And I think this Jake something slow burn is going to have to be carefully constructed because, as we mentioned, week after week, the top of the card, especially for the Impact World title, is so jam packed. He seemed like he's jet set to be an eventual world champion. I think he's cut from the same cloth as, former Impact World champions, and he's someone you can build around. I see a lot in Jake something, but the timing has to be right. And right now, there's a lot of story to be told, as we mentioned before, with Josh Alexander and Alex Shelley. But there's other people at the top of the card. You can go down the list. I mean, Moose had one which we'll talk about in the Feast or Fire briefcases. He has a world title shot on deck for himself, former world champion. But anyone else you want to heat up, these guys are all kind of in the mix here. And not to mention, too, Chris Sabin can option C, and he's involved as well. So timing may not be right for Jake something, and it's going to be tricky to keep him with the momentum moving forward into the next few months, because it's going to be a while before he's heated up to have meaningful programs. So that doesn't mean you can't put him involved with the Digital Media Championship or figure out a different way to keep him active. But this guy is a main eventer. This is a guy that you ultimately want at the top of your card. It's just not yet. I mean, it's going to take months and months, especially with Alexander being back. Maybe he wants to be in the big bad for Alexander come the fall. If you want to put the title on Alexander, and then late fall, November, December, early winter, Jake something versus Josh Alexander. But I feel like there's so much story right now with the main eventers. It's almost hard to even insert Jake something at this point. So it just worries me about the momentum being sustained.
Yeah, it's a little bit crowded, which, maybe they'll have him. Maybe this Dirty Dango story isn't over, or maybe they're just going to continue to set up some mid-card feuds with him. I mean, I think as long as he gets in, and continues to get reps in, he'll hang in there, and it won't take him long to heat up whenever they're ready for him at the top of the card. But like you said, it is crowded right now. And this is actually kind of a perfect transition to the next segment, but I could see him down the line in a program with somebody like Steve Macklin doing very well.
Yeah.
Like them having a one-on-one with Macklin being the heel, especially being a little bit more equally matched physically. Something's got quite a height advantage on Steve Macklin, but they're both pretty broad and stocky dudes. So I could see that being a good program.
Yeah, and I think Steve Macklin's a good example of how quick you can heat somebody up. I mean, it was by need with Macklin. He was a guy that they had to heat up quickly because of injury, and he was a guy who fit into that slot perfectly. And I think he earned a lot of trust from Impact higher management because of what he did and ran with it for the short period of time he did. So he'll always be kind of looked upon in a very fond light. Picking up the ball when it was dropped by somebody, injury or otherwise, is always looked upon with, everyone has to be thankful for what Macklin did. That being said, I think he's a good example of what's a model Jake something after, and it might be the perfect, like you said, I think that program could have some money to it and figure out a way to let Jake something get a little bit of that rub off Macklin and then have him stay in that upper tier. He needs to be above the mid card. He needs to find a way to hover above it until you're ready to, light the fuse and get him to fully go through the top of the glass ceiling. But we have the Steve Macklin promo, as you mentioned, this perfect transition. And he talks about wanting to finish what he started. And he said, except for Rhino, who attacked him last week, and almost on cue, Rhino appears out of nowhere, gave him the gore into some equipment, which was awesome to see. We get the replay of the attack. Macklin was still down. Santino comes in. He's yelling at Rhino for the attack. And Rhino's pissed. He doesn't give a shit. So it looks like Rhino, I understand it's Impact 1000. There's that caveat. It's not guaranteed that all these guys are seeing on the screen is going to be there. Feels like Rhino might be there for a couple weeks because he's starting a program. We may get a payoff with this Macklin feud. So cool to see Rhino on our screen for a consistent rate at this point.
Absolutely, man, and I think Rhino's looking really good
He does,
coming
yeah.
back too. He looks like he's leaned out a little bit in his time off, and yeah, I'm excited to see him back. I love this spear through the road cases was awesome. Or excuse me, gore. We're talking Rhino here. It's not a it's a but the gore through the road cases was fantastic. And I love when coming back from a commercial break, you start with the beginning of the segment that led you to the break like that, because it makes it seem urgent and chaotic. And yeah, I thought that was just a really nice subtle touch from the production team at Impact.
Yeah, and I think Rhino still has a lot more to give. We talk about some of these veterans on this Impact roster. Rhino has a lot to give to the younger talent, and Steve Macklin, who's accomplished a lot in a short time on the Impact roster, could definitely benefit from a program with Rhino. We talk about keeping someone sustaining momentum, and that's something right now where Macklin's on the back burner. He was a guy that they heated up when they needed to. He was a guy who was carrying the top of the card when the injuries were kind of surmounting everybody. Now he's on the back burner, but this is a good program that is right there, similar to Bully Ray and PCO, where it was like kind of off on an island by itself doing its own thing. This is an opportunity to have Macklin and Rhino have a main event caliber program. And that's what Impact does really well. It doesn't have to be focused on the championship. I think we know wrestling that all the goal is to win the championship, except why would you be in the business, kayfabe wise? But I think these personal feuds that start similar to, it can start very simply and then be accentuated by attack in the back, and nothing is more fighting worthy than someone goring you into an equipment case, and that's where you kind of go to war after that. And you don't need more than that. Two big brawny guys going after each other.
Yeah, man, this is and they've got unfinished business, from Rhino's last run before he was out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the continuation of this storyline. And I also love me some Heath and Rhino as a team, so maybe we get to see a little of that as well while Rhino's back.
Which is so like it. I love that era of SmackDown when they're the tag team champions and all that. It's so interesting because it was so random, but it's one of the most memorable times in Rhino's career. And it was just a one-off that they threw them together and they teamed for that time. And if you ask anyone about Rhino's time on the roster, either a fan during the Attitude Era where he was involved with the Edge and Christian stuff, and he was involved in that the latter match at WrestleMania 17 where he came in with Lita and Spike Dudley got involved, all that. But also there's an era of people that remember Rhino fondly because of his time teaming with Heath. It's just so fascinating to me because he's done so much. And he's one of those veterans that bridged the gap of time where his time in ECW, his time in WWE, WWF, and now this time in Impact, it's been really meaningful and awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to see him back.
So we have Eric Young with Scott D'Amore taking on Kenny King with Sheldon Jean, or at least we thought, because Scott came out waving the Canadian flag. He's wearing, the Team Canada garb, and he's really hamming it up here. And then just a minute into the match, Sheldon Jean got involved, hit Eric Young from behind. Ref immediately calls for the bell. Shark Boy's music hits, gets a huge pop. We know that last week they announced he's the deputy of authority now, and he made this a tag team match. So, of course, Eric Young got the win by DQ, but this sets up the stage for the fourth match of the evening. Eric Young and Scott D'Amore teaming up against Kenny King and Sheldon Jean. And this match only went a few seconds before Young and Scott were attacked by Diener. So we had two matches, two schmazzes back to back in such a short period of time. So ruled a no contest. And then Shark Boy came back out and he made it an 8-man tag. And this time he brought out America's Most Wanted to team with Scott and Young. So this was confusing. I mean, not confusing. I would say discombobulated.
Sure.
It took a long way to get from point A to point B. Why wouldn't we just do the 8-man tag from the jump? But I guess I appreciate the theatrics because these are guys that weren't supposed to be wrestling. They're semi-retired. You want to kind of keep the kayfabe up. But ultimately, we went from a singles match to a tag team match, then to an 8-man tag. Your thoughts on this?
Happy to see America's Most Wanted get out there. But I kind of hated this, man, mainly just because we talked about how there was a bit of a difference between the first episode of the 1000th show celebration and the second one. And it's not any more stark than right here for me. We're ending the show with a 10-woman tag match and we're hodgepodging together an 8-man tag in the middle of the show. I understand we're trying to get as many people on the card as possible, but and it wasn't a bad 8-man tag, but yeah, it was a really roundabout way of getting here. And I don't know. I didn't do it for me, man.
I agree with you, and I think the main thing is they wanted America's Most Wanted active, but the only way this was going to happen is they had to kind of hide the inadequacy of just the ring rust by putting them in this tag match. So they wanted them to get their shine and their flowers, and well deserved. One of the best acts in Impact history. If we're looking at this from the lens of just celebrating TNA/Impact and the 1000th episode and all that, so understand wanting them in the ring to be active and do that for the moment. But as far as progressing story of the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month TV of Impact, it accomplished nothing outside of really making Kenny King and Sheldon Jean sort of look goofy. And I don't like that, especially for the active roster. You want to make sure that they're protected. There was some stuff in here that was fun, definitely nostalgic. The fans are having a good time. And at the end of the day, that's what wrestling's about most times. The fans are having a good time. And I'm sure fans at home are watching this, especially those that grew up on AMW and Team Canada. This was, if you think about the impact that both of those teams have had throughout the company, you don't want to lose sight of that they're very important to the legacy of TNA/Impact. But I'm always, if you guys listen to me on Wrestling Tonight, I'm always about the here and now. How do we make the wrestling here and now better? And there's a good way to, instead of, just patting people on the back, and they did a good job of that. Eric Young was the guy who got the pin. It wasn't like they gave the pin to James Storm, Chris Harris, or Scott D'Amore. It was gave Eric Young the pin. He's the guy who benefits from it. He's still active. He's a main eventer, all of that. But this could have been something different. That you could have got them involved in some way. I think it would have been awesome to see Eric Young and Kenny King go at it. And then America's Most Wanted could have just came out here and got involved. You know what I mean? Like, come out after and get involved. I just think it was such a weird way to get to it. I appreciate the emphasis on nostalgia at times, but it's just, we want to focus on the progression of stories and developing the characters of Kenny King and Sheldon Jean more so than patting America's Most Wanted on the back. And there's a delicate balance of that. And I know that might be harsh, but I'm thinking about the current roster more so than the history.
Yeah, I don't think it's harsh, man. I just think I think it's a fair assessment, but I also understand wanting to get America's Most Wanted out here on the show and, give them their due, because they're probably not going to be in Memphis. They're probably signed on just for these 2 nights to come out and do the Legends thing for the 1000th show. So just kind of a byproduct of doing a type of show like this. And, next week, it's pretty uncommon that we have a match that we review on weekly TV for Impact where I'm just like, yeah, this just wasn't doing it for me, man. I kind of didn't like this. So I think we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming next week and won't have one of these spots.
Yeah, and I think if you didn't watch these last 2 weeks of TV outside of the Shelley and Alexander stuff and outside of like the Rascals backstage segments, you didn't really, the Feast or Fire stuff as well, which we'll talk about in a second, that progressed story, but nothing you can't just be caught up on by a video highlight package, because this was more of a celebration of the history, not so about the recent times and Impact. And I get it, man. Like, you want to celebrate the past, and they have an emphasis on the history, and they have a long history that's illustrious, and you want to make sure that you're honoring your history, because you're only as great as those that came before you. You're standing on the shoulders of these teams that got there. But there's a different way to format it. There's a way to get America's Most Wanted and Team Canada involved without sacrificing time on the card or time or just the legitimacy of someone like Sheldon Jean and Kenny King. I'm stuck on that. I really am, because it's not like they were made to look silly. It wasn't like the FTR having to shave their back type of stuff. I just always, it's a fine line that you want to make sure that your current roster continues to look stronger than those that came before it. The FTR and DX thing at the Raw reunion always bothers me. It sticks with me. What is the benefit of having older talent that's retired come out and embarrass the talent that's active? It makes the roster look silly. And I don't think this was that. It skirted on the line, certainly. It was there. It almost got there. It was done with a touch because it was fun and nostalgic, and it wasn't an embarrassment, but you want to be careful because, as we said, Kenny King, Sheldon Jean, Diener, and Khan, they're going to be there week after week. So you want to make sure that they come out smelling like roses more so than anybody else.
Absolutely.
So we get the clips from the Feast or Fired from last week, and we have Dave LaGreca from Busted Open. He's backstage before commercial, And then we come back from commercial, and LaGreca is hosting the reveal of the Feast and Fire. And of course, we have Moose with Brian Myers. Chris Bay is accompanied by Ace Austin. You is with Joe Hendry, and of course, Crazy Steve. He's there by himself. So they're all holding their briefcases, standing 1 to 4. And each wrestler was talking about what they wanted. And mostly everybody said they wanted a tag team title shot, except for Crazy Steve. I don't even know what Crazy Steve said he wanted. I think he said he wants liver or like organs,
liver, hearts, or maybe even lungs.
Something like that. Exactly. So they start revealing them from 1 to 4, and Steve opens his case. It's a digital media championship shot. So he starts cutting a little bit of a promo on Tommy Dreamer before walking away. So the world's full of dreamers. That's what the promo pretty much was. Moose opens up with a big smile on his face, and Brian Myers looked a little discouraged because he wanted the tag title shot, but Moose getting a world title shot, former world champion. He's Mr. Impact himself. So going to be cool. I mean, you have that in your pocket, Alex Shelley versus Moose, or potentially Josh Alexander versus Moose, if you want to do that down the line. And then we get to Chris Bay. This obviously is the most interesting one because we know whoever gets the tag one is, that leaves the fired for the other one. So Chris Bay opens up, he smiles, and he's actually said, I thought I might have been gone from here, but I'm not. He has a tag team title shot. So that leaves us with the realization that you and Hendry, Joya, are not going to get a tag title shot. No, not even. You is not even going to be on the roster anymore. He revealed the fired case. We get some sad music in the background. Joe Hendry looks devastated. Yua said no champion, and we go to black. So I don't know if this is Yua going back to Japan for some time, or are they going to find a way to work out of this? Of course, advertising him versus Josh Alexander. I know we're keeping up the silver lining of that, but you called this last week. You said you was gone.
Yeah.
What did you know?
I didn't know anything. I just thought about what made the most sense. And for me, Yuya getting the pink slip because he has New Japan to go back to made the most sense to me. And, maybe he's not going to, maybe he's not going all the way back to Japan. Maybe he's going to do New Japan Strong stuff. I mean, he could stay stateside and still do New Japan stuff. So, I don't know. I mean, as much as I like Yuya Uemura, Joya felt a little forced to me. It was over, but it was not as over with the crowd as just Joe Hendry as a singles. It's a situation for me where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Joe Hendry is super over as a singles competitor. There's, maybe we get a Joe Hendry Jake something program. That could be great. I would love that. Both the guys that are, a little bit ahead of the mid card that don't really have enough going on right now. Maybe they could go at it together and have a storyline. I like that idea. And yeah, I mean, it just would have felt a little forced to me if Joey were the ones that ended up with the tag shot. So yeah, I figured with him having, he's already, I mean, he's not on loan, but he's hanging out with us, but still obviously has a deal with New Japan. Just made the most sense for me for him to take the loss. I also like I like Crazy Steve getting the digital media championship. I think him and Dreamer will be able to do a cool program together. And, Moose and Josh Alexander had a hell of a feud before Josh had to hang it up due to injury. So excited to see chapter 2 of that somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I mean, you have the write on the wall. You think Josh Alexander is going to be the champion. So riding that up there.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, I also had a vision too. Maybe we get a Joe Hendry heel turn where he was the one that switched the case or something, that he wanted Yua fired so he can go on and further aspirations. Maybe he thought like he didn't know how to break it. I don't know. That would be a cool.
I like that. That's a nice
way
layer
to do it. And then maybe that's the silver lining, that they can figure out a way to get Yua back in because it was switched and they can't really fire anybody else. He can earn his job back. So there's that. And then a Joe Hendry heel turn with this cocky gimmick, Simon Dean type of stuff where he's out there singing. I know it's catchy and people are going to want to sing along, but there's a way you can get heat with it too. So I kind of want that version of Joe Hendry. I think it's untapped potential. And as we see with like Jade Cargill in AEW, we know if you put the machine behind the star, I think like similar to Jade's going to blow up and the casuals are going to get to know her name real quickly. Joe Hendry has the potential. I know we say it week after week. Seeing him, he's a guy that if you put the WWE machine behind him, he could be a guy who's everyone's buying his shirt, everyone's singing his song, all of that.
Yeah, Dark Joe Hendry is a layer I hadn't thought of yet, but I'm excited for that possibility.
Because the thing is, he doesn't have to change that much. He could continue
No.
to be who he is. His intentions just change. He could have the same presentation. It's just his actions are going to be tied with. It almost makes really a little bit more nefarious about how he's acting, because if he has his own selfish intentions on sabotaging you his career, and he's still doing this smiling gimmick and he's happy and singing, it makes him almost more dastardly for doing that, not changing his demeanor. Maybe he goes week after week, it gets revealed. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of cool to see. And it's a different layer. We want to keep Joe Hendry similar to Jake Something, kind of control C, control V, what we're talking about with Jake Something. You got to keep this dude hot because he kind of was on the back burner. As you mentioned, Joe, you felt kind of forced. It was also like, since he lost the digital media championship, there's been a lack of buzz. You're not really seeing the same type of stuff. Although they're still releasing the music videos, they're still talking about his on-screen character. The stuff is kind of going viral, but not to the level it was when he was really hot, probably about 6 months ago.
Yeah, and not to just beat this to death, but now that you got my mind turning a little bit here with the idea that there might be something sinister behind Joe having something to do with Yuya's case being the pink slip, because you remember Joe's contractually obligated rematch for the digital media championship. He included Yuya Uemura in it as a triple threat, and Joe didn't get pinned. Yuya did. So, and we saw a little bit of reluctance on his face going into that match, that it even was a triple threat, even though he had agreed to it. So, man, maybe we've just had these tiny little seeds of animosity between these two guys for a lot longer than we realize.
It's very possible, and I like that. And we know Impact has an eye for storytelling, and they don't forget things. They have long memories. They'll make sure that if it did happen, they'll include it, and they'll make sense of it. So we'll see definitely down the line. And our next match here was akin from our normal Impact. It was a breath of fresh air. We got the nonstop action that we usually have, and it's a 15-minute match between two guys that can go all day. Josh Alexander and Trey Miguel with Zach Wentz in his corner. This match was awesome. I mean, let's just say it now. It was match of the night by far. Yeah. These guys went out there and put on a show. Seeing Josh Alexander in the ring with the restrictions off, he's going full tilt, not a tag match, not a multi-man match of any kind. It's out there just mano-a-mano against a guy who can go equally as him. He looks like $1 million, wearing some new tights as well. He's ready, man. He's ready for that main program. It's exciting to see. And a test here with Trey Miguel was awesome. And they gave Trey Miguel a lot. Match went back and forth, and we saw some great spots. And of course, the cheating with the Rascals is always evident. It's so awesome. First of all, shout out to Trey Miguel for liking the Brace for Impact post. And thank you if you're watching, Trey Miguel. We love you. The Rascals are our team. We've been pulling for you guys to win the tag team titles for quite some time. And this act the Rascals have going right now with those soccer jerseys, the green, the spray paint, the music presentation, it's aces, dude. But Josh Alexander was just too much for him, of course. Even the cheating wasn't enough to stop the walking weapon. And we got Alexander giving Trey the C4 spike, got the pin, but we got Alex Shelley involved before that. So he attacks, evens the odds with Zachary Wentz on the outside. And we get more Alex Shelley heel tendencies here. He definitely has an edge to him. We talked about it last week, and there's tendencies here where it feels like on the drop of a dime, they could turn him heel and he could just be absolutely despised by the Impact audience because just how loved Josh Alexander is, but he's just an inch away from turning full-blown heel.
Absolutely, man. And he's definitely a heel, excuse me, to Josh Alexander. And it was kind of odd when he first ran out there tonight. You know, I was like, oh, is he coming to give him backup? And I mean, Josh got on the mic as soon as he got the pin and went right in on Shelley for it. He said, hey, man, I really appreciate you having my back here. I could have used that last week, and I could have also used it as emergence. And, you know, Shelley gets right in his face and says, don't get your signals mixed here, man. I came out here because I wanted to hurt the Rascals, not because I wanted to help you. Also, just shout out to Josh Alexander. That C4 spike that he gave tonight was particularly brutal. I love that finisher. It's always badass. But I was legitimately worried for Trey Miguel after taking that. That one, it just looked absolutely brutal. Great looking finish. You said it, man. Easily match of the night, no contest. And I'm liking the continuation of the build here with him and And Shelley, I mean, this is where we make it official. You know, Josh Alexander says, "Man, I'm calling it right now. I'm coming back. I'm coming to take that belt back at Bound for Glory." And you know, we always knew this is where we were going, but it's nice to have it officially on paper and know that that's going to be the main event in Chicago on the 21st.
The other really cool spot that's probably going to go viral, and I didn't go on X earlier today to see if it was like with a GIF or whatever going around, or GIF, however the kids say it. There was a Meteora spot where, you know, Trey comes off the top rope, tries to hit the Meteora, but kind of flips through, and Alexander turned that into an ankle lock and then being sent outside the ring. That was a fantastic sequence of events. I mean, these guys work at a different level. And I understand, like, it's almost like, you know, battle with a weighted bat. Like we just watched, and no disrespect to America's Most Wanted or the nostalgia acts we've seen in the ring. But when you see those guys go and then you see Alexander and Trey Miguel, it's like, I don't know. I mean, there's something to be said about change of pace where these guys are just moving at 1.7 speed compared to most guys, and just the level of expertise and crispness of the in-ring work. There might not be two better guys to go, you know, anywhere. Like, you could watch these guys go, and the chemistry they had, the ability to tell a story in the ring. And for a guy, Trey Miguel, I understand he is a tag champion and they present the tag team championship as a main event level title. But so often in wrestling companies, you have tag teams feel lesser than. And when they're involved against a main eventer, it's a preconceived notion that, you know, go back in the day, if you have Stone Cold wrestling Bubba Ray Dudley, or you have Stone Cold wrestling Jeff Hardy or Triple H and Jeff Hardy. And there's been moments where, like, when Jeff Hardy beat Triple H, it was a huge deal. Like, everyone's like, that's the underdog story of the year. They find a way to make Miguel and Wentz feel on the level of main eventers. And Alexander still feels like the guy. But even when, I wonder if Miguel can keep up. Like, they're both presented in very strong ways. Miguel and Wentz, they cheat. We get that. Kayfabe, they're finding ways to cheat, and they'll always take their shot at doing that. But what makes it so frustrating is that they're so talented, and they're able to hold their own against guys like Josh Alexander. They don't have to cheat. That's the best story. They're not winning because they're cheating. Of course they are cheating, and it does impact their wins and losses. They don't have to do it. And point is, the tag team champions are being presented as an equal to a formidable number one contender to the world title. And that's booking 101. That's the perfect way to present your champions.
Yeah, and Impact does a better job of it than anybody in the business right now, in my opinion.
So if we put, like, let's just try to break it down too. If, like, say we put Dax in the ring with MJF, do you think Dax feels like he's in the same level as MJF with how AEW presents them? Dax by himself, not Dax and Cash, just Dax.
I mean, I think Dax is much closer, for the way AEW presents them. I think Dax is much more closer, and no offense to Cash Wheeler here, but just based on presentation, I think Dax feels like he is much more on the same level as MJF than Cash Wheeler would be, which is not the case here with the Rascals. Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel feel like they are presented equally as strong as singles and as a team, whereas I feel like, you know, Dax and Cash are a team, and you get to see Dax solo every now and again, but I don't remember the last time we saw Cash Wheeler have a singles match on AEW programming, or if it's even ever happened.
Probably just the Owen Hart tournament against each other.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just something I noticed too. Just all their champions. I mean, maybe Tommy Dreamer is the exception now,
Sure.
But all these guys, the champions, feel important. And even like the Knockouts division, the Knockouts, you know, MK Ultra feels, I mean, goddamn, they feel very much on the same level as even Trinity. And anytime they link up, they go toe to toe. It feels like Masha could definitely go over Trinity at any given moment.
Oh, 100%.
So Tom Hannafin announcing the big news that's probably going to make you pull the trigger on buying tickets for Bound for Glory. Will Ospreay, we knew he was going to be in action, but he's going to be taking on Mike Bailey.
Yeah.
This is going to be one hell of a match. We could start the build. You have a month from this. I don't even know if you need the build, because Will Ospreay is, you know, old Billy Goat's not going to be in town for that to build it up. You don't really need it. This is almost dream match status. Two of the best to do it right now. Not sure if they've linked up before elsewhere. I'd have to look it up on Cage Match, but this match in an Impact ring will be a first time, and it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely, man. And, you know, we we had this match originally booked for Multiverse United 2. It's going to be so good. Yeah, this needs zero build. It's going to be incredible. This is a dream match. This is two of the best technicians in the pro wrestling business today. Two very unique. They're both very unique styles. This will be. I mean, I hope it's not a once in a lifetime. I hope that obviously we get these guys to match up again. But yeah, I'm with you there, Ace. I don't know if they've ever matched up before. If they have, I don't think it's been more than a couple of times. But
I just looked it up. So just their most recent was August 20th of 2022. They wrestled at Rev Pro.
Okay.
And before that, I mean, Will Ospreay, if you look at the eras of Will Ospreay, I think 2022 is like the current version of him.
Sure.
But prior, they wrestled in 2017 for a promotion for WXPW. And then obviously 2015 PWG, which again, 2015 is a lifetime ago, especially with where both these guys are now and the expertise that they've acquired over time. But yeah, these guys can go. The highest rated match is the most recent one. It was given 4 3/4 stars from the Wrestling Observer newsletter from the Rev Pro show. So
it's pretty killer rating there, man. Yeah, I'd imagine this one's only going to be on par, if not better.
So this was the Rev Pro 10-year anniversary show. So I think you guys can find this on maybe YouTube, but check it out. Either way, in the Impact universe, this is the first time they're facing each other, and we have two guys. And that at this point in their career, I understand if they wrestled before, but this is almost the final version of what they are. There's been so much growth from both guys. It felt like Will Ospreay couldn't have gotten better. Well, he did. Same thing with Mike Bailey. Dude got better and better, and this feels like he can even get better. And this match may take him to the next level to bring him to, because Rev Pro's fine, PWG's fine. That's a good thing to have under your belt. But Impact is still the definitely consummate number 3 in pro wrestling. To do this on a big stage like Bound for Glory, it's going to go way further. It's going to have more eyes on it. So this is a good place to show your stuff and go all out. And hopefully, like I said before, early in the show, have the opportunity to show, challenge someone's got to challenge that Omega match. And maybe it's Will Ospreay himself against somebody else, but it's going to be hard to. But like I said, Mike Bailey versus Will Ospreay is certainly an opportunity to give it a run for its money. So we have John Gresham in the back approaching Mike Bailey, the aforementioned Bailey backstage. And Gresham said that he was just checking in on him. And he wants to make sure that everyone's 100% for Bound for Glory, him and Ospreay. And Gresham said he has been world champion. He knew what it took to get there, kind of throwing a barb at Mike Bailey. And he said the only way to do it was to win clean matches. And Bailey said he had the perfect opponent for Bailey himself. So Gresham agreed. So we get John Gresham versus Mike Bailey. We referenced that's advertised. We've seen them team up. They were in the tag team eliminator tournament like not too long ago. They've wrestled each other. This match has definitely happened in the Impact universe. We just know how good it's going to be. These guys can go, and John Gresham being cleared to wrestle, that's another good thing. Yeah,
this is going to be a great match. Man, the nose poke from Speedball Bailey on John Gresham was it's a nice little touch there, man. That was a little bit of Gresham threw that barb at Bailey for not having been world champion. And man, that was poking another grown man in the nose, man. There's not much more emasculating than that. Shout out to Tyson. Thanks for hanging with us, brother.
So awesome. And that was a great segment. Nice way to have a little bit of build for Will Ospreay and set the stage for next week and build Mike Bailey. And I fully expect Mike Bailey to go over clean over John Gresham, just getting him ready, because I think that's going to be the goal from now until then. If Will Ospreay is not going to be on Impact Television to build it forward, Mike Bailey has to be as strong as possible. Win after win, stack him up so that if he feels like going into Bound for Glory, he can and could beat Will Ospreay. Will he? Remains to be seen. But I think that's the goal right now. Speedball needs to be built up to the highest level that he's ever been built up on the Impact roster. This is the most prestigious match he's had so far since his time at Impact. So this is going to be an awesome opportunity for him and good for him. This is going to be awesome in Chicago. The fans are going to go nuts for this. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be killer.
So the Rascals backstage, and they're recovering from everything that went down with Shelley and Alexander, and John Schuyler walked up. He's like, all right, I want a title shot, guys. And the Rascals said that it wasn't the time. And then ABC walked in, catching the good hands, colluding with the Rascals. And they said it didn't matter since they had a guaranteed shot thanks to Feast or Fired. Skylar said it didn't guarantee anything before appealing to the Rascals, who quietly just snuck out of the room while Skylar wasn't looking. Skylar looks like a total dweeb here, which again, they're bordering. We know how good they are in the ring. They were presented strong for like 2 weeks, but they're a comedy act here in Impact, which it's not a bad trope to have, especially if you can be taken seriously in the ring. But I wish the good hands would be taken seriously at the top of the card. Maybe we'll get it eventually, but right now they're being geeked on by the Rascals.
Yeah, and I think we've got a few more weeks of that left before we see any sort of turn for the good hands.
So we got Tyson in the chat still. Colt, best of luck in the ball contest. Just voted, so everyone vote. And we'll definitely do some shilling after this, but make sure you guys vote for Colton for that beautiful Kentucky waterfall. Bring home the prize. He was top 75. We're trying to be what? Top 25 now?
Top 25, man. Voting goes through Friday. Tyson, thank you so much for voting, brother. You can vote once every 24 hours between now and tomorrow night at midnight.
Hell yeah, which leads us into our main event, and it's that 10-woman tag. This was just, I mean, there was some good spots in here, but this was just kind of just a fun, crowd-pleasing match to highlight some of the past and present of the Impact Knockouts division. Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, Mickie James, Trinity, and Jordan Grace defeated Angelina Love, Deonna Purrazzo, Tasha Steelz, Giselle Shaw, and Savannah Evans. Main takeaway from this match is, why did Awesome Kong get the pin? I understand, again, we talked about nostalgia and all that. It's the perfect opportunity to have, Awesome Kong could have got her stuff in. I just think Trinity always should be the one, especially she's the team captain. She should be getting the rub here, especially building her strong going towards wherever they're going for Bound for Glory.
I don't know. I get why Awesome Kong got the pin, and I think it's because out of all the Legends knockouts that came in this match, Awesome Kong is the oldest, so she's definitely got I believe, the longest amount of time since she's been in a ring. So, you mentioned her getting her stuff in. I think that, just perhaps she might have more limitations than the rest of them. So this is really the best way for her to get her flowers in, to get her shit in, is to get the pin. I thought it was cool. I liked this match better than I thought I was going to. Like I said, we had that kind of roundabout way of getting to an 8-man tag halfway through the card. I'm like, man, we really need an 8-man tag with a 10-woman tag coming up for the main event. But it flowed a lot better than I thought it was. I'm not a huge fan of 8-person or 10-person tags. I'm not even the big, 6-man tag, sure, especially when there's like a trios belt on the line situation in AEW. But once you start getting that many bodies, especially on some sort of team, and you're not doing like a old school Survivor Series or like War Games situation or Blood and Guts where you have 2 rings, it just gets a little crowded and can get a little convoluted at times for my taste. And I thought that this flowed really, really well. I thought, everybody got their shit in for the most part. I thought it was a great homage to the Knockouts division and very well deserved. But kind of a weird main event. Not because it's the 1,000th. Easy for me to say, pal. The 1,000th episode celebration. I think it makes perfect sense as a main event. I think if it had been any other week, it would have been pretty weird placement, and I'd be scratching my head a little bit.
Yeah, I think the pacing was okay, and the action definitely was there. Like, I think they did a good job of covering up some of the shortcomings of the more limited legends in the ring. Obviously carried by the work rate of some of the best women in women's wrestling, bar none. I mean, look at some of the workers in there: Jordan Grace, Deonna Purrazzo, Giselle Shaw, Savannah Evans. They're able to go there and carry the weight of, the veterans there. And we want to give our flowers to the Awesome Kongs and the Angelina Loves, the Tasha Steelz, making sure that and the Gail Kims, obviously. Mickie James is sort of on foot in both camps here.
Yeah.
But, I know I was critical of Awesome Kong getting the pin, and I see your point, because clearly, like, she can't get her shit in because of the fact that she's so limited. The only way really is to have her moment by being the big bad to pin. So I see that. But I always am hesitant, and I understand it's not in lieu of somebody else. It's not like Trinity was pinned by Awesome Kong.
Right.
I always want to look at it as an opportunity to put the stamp of approval on the current generation. And maybe, they did that. Everyone raised their hands and stuff. But I think it would have been cool for like Awesome Kong to hit her move. And then Trinity was the one to hit her move. And then Trinity almost like takes some of the power from Awesome Kong and carries that into her title reign. But this was just fun.
Too. Yeah.
This lives in a vacuum by itself. You know what I mean? Like stuff like this will live in a vacuum by itself. This is just a celebration of the women that came before. It is a celebration of, in my estimation, the best women's division in all of pro wrestling. Just the history of the lineage and the opportunity. I understand WWE has the recency and the fact that the biggest stage of WrestleMania, but these go back in time and look at the time where Awesome Kong was active and Gail Kim and Mickie James grinding, where pro wrestling was not respecting women's wrestling to the level it is now. It wasn't in vogue to be doing what WWE is doing now. And they were trendsetters. They were trailblazers. This is a good way to write a love letter to women's wrestling and what Impact did for it. And it also had me feeling like it's in really good hands. And the women's division that exists now in Impact Wrestling is in one of the best spots it's ever been. And I know we're talking about Mickie James and Trinity having the program for Bound for Glory, and some would say, maybe it should be somebody else in that big spot. But I think this is sort of almost the final infinity stone for the Knockouts division, where like Mickie James has to get it. We mentioned before, she relinquished the title because she's hurt. If she's going to be active, let her be at the top of the card. I mean, she still can go. She still has the big drawing power. I mean, that pop she got last week when she returned, when Hardcore Country hit and everyone's trying to buy a used car. No, I'm joking. But it's a flagship joke, guys. If you, the entrance theme invitational, Hardcore Country. And now that Cult song is stuck in my head. So that's another story.
As if I needed another reason to hate Indiana.
Exactly. But hell yeah, man. This was cool to see. Should it, like, on any given week, if this was the main event, I'd be ripping it apart. But like I said, the 1000th episode lives in a vacuum. We can get back to all the fun and live action and have a match like Josh Alexander and Trey Miguel, which was my main event of the night, main eventing cards. But this was a good way to pay respect to those who paved the road, because we're standing on the bricks that they paved.
Absolutely. Two other takeaways on this I want to mention. First of all, I thought Gail Kim looked great, man. She did a great job. Awesome to see her being able to move in the ring like that. And then also we're referring to Jordynne Grace as the Juggernaut now, and I'm 100% here for that. I love it.
Moniker fits. I mean, she's
very, very fitting moniker.
And we got Tyson in the chat. Mickey was on the Knockout Championship. We believe that she's going to be gunning for it October 21st in Chicago. And Tyson, I'll let Colton take a hand to this. What is wrong with Indiana? Colton tell you. I mean, sports.
I mean, not just sports, man. It's just
Here we go.
It ain't Kentucky. I'll tell you that. We'll leave it at that. We'll keep it rated G tonight.
All right, let's get to the impactful moment. Talk about our match or moment of the week, and kind of give a final wrap up of the second half of the 1000th episode.
Impactful.
All right, impactful here, talking about our favorite moments or matches from this week in Impact on AXS. Colton, I'll let you lead the way. I'll give you the honors of saying our match of the week together, unless you had a moment that caught your eye over this.
No, I mean, we can say it at the same time if you want. It's definitely the Josh Alexander Trey Miguel match.
Hell yeah, 15 minutes of just great action. That's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, as far as, I mean, if we had to pick a moment, I did enjoy the feast or fired segment.
I thought the presentation was so good on that. Because we were talking about the infamous nature of this stipulation. They did a really good job presenting it, making it feel like deal or no deal, right? Like when they have the briefcases and just like it felt heavy, which was cool. When Moose got that world title, like that's a big deal. It really is.
Oh, for sure, man. And yeah, I liked the reveal too, that they opened, just like you said, man, it was straight out of Deal or No Deal, where they opened the cases facing them and then turned it around for the audience to see. I'm a fan of this concept, man. I know some people aren't a fan of that gimmick, but I like the idea of, shaking shit up and, doing this maybe once a year at least somewhere, down. And I thought it was cool. I really enjoyed it. This is the first time that I've experienced this gimmick match in real time, not going back and watching it, in an era previous. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I thought they executed it pretty well.
Agree with you. And like the match, I mean, we go back and listen to us talk about it when we first covered it, but Alexander and Miguel went out there and reminded us, like, if most Impact Wrestling episodes have matches like that littered throughout the card. So I'm excited to get back to next week where they're in Memphis and they're going to go back to back, wall to wall with these matches, steal the show and show why it's the most consistent wrestling product on the planet. So I'm excited for next week. And the celebration was fun, but it's almost like after the party, and like I'm sweeping up the confetti, and it's the day after a big party, it's the cleanup, and I'm just looking forward to moving on to the day to day and get back to the week grind as we build towards Bound for Glory.
Oh yeah, man. It's like we said, we're a month out, and I'm expecting nothing but top tier weekly TV like we always get from Impact. They do a great job building towards a big event, and I guess the next 4 weeks are going to be something.
So let's get to the shock and awe. We'll give some shilling, give our final wrap up, and preview the show for next week, and obviously give you all the information about how to vote for that beautiful mullet that you see in that screen there. Let's get to shock and awe.
Shock and awe.
All right, so next week's show will be on 9/29 for the weekly TV show on Impact. We'll be talking about all the latest news in Impact, tying in some of the build to Bound for Glory. Believe it or not, our last show of September, dude. We're going to be heading into October. This month flew by. Colton, let's get into some shilling before we get into the tavern stuff. The floor is yours. Talk about that mullet, man. Let's get that trophy.
Man, we're getting close, guys. So, we started this competition a couple of weeks ago where we had 277 total mullets entered. Had to get to the top 75 to get to round 2 with everybody's support. Thank you so much to everybody that voted and reshared. We actually made it to the top 60 in the first round. So we were firmly into round 2, which was great. Voting's going on right now. It's going through tomorrow at midnight. So you can vote once a day per person, once every 24 hours. So, and it does reset at the 24-hour mark. So if you vote at 11:30 tonight, you're not gonna be able to vote tomorrow again until 11:30 tomorrow. But yeah, the link is in my bio. The link is in my story. It's, it's been, the tavern's been reposting it. Ace has been reposting it. Our good buddy J-Bone over at Coming Down the Aisles be reposting it. If you follow any of us, you're going to be able to find the link. Mullet.mania is my Instagram. Come give me a follow. Hit the link. It really doesn't take anything at all. They are raising money. If you scroll down to the bottom, there are donations for a great cause. It's Jared Allen's Home for Wounded Warriors, but donations are not required. The vote is right there, right underneath my picture. You don't have to sign up for anything. You don't have to give your email. I appreciate you guys' vote. Hopefully we make it to the top 25, and we'd love to bring that mullet trophy back home to the tavern. And $10,000 wouldn't hurt my feelings either. So yeah, appreciate everybody's love and support. And if we don't make it to the top 25 this year, we'll be back next year.
Hell yeah, man. You guys support it. Make sure you guys click the link because it's easy. And go on multiple devices, guys. Computer, phone, whatever. You have another device. You have a cousin. You have whoever's living with you. Everyone vote for Colton. If he wins, we all win. But make sure you guys are checking out theturnbuckletavern.com for all your tavern needs. We have all this great stuff here. Make sure you guys check out all the shows. 6 or 7 days worth of content. We have the debate. We can go down the list. Covering WWE. We cover AEW. Of course, you guys found us here on Impact. We have the interviews. We have the flagship show, T-shirts, and you guys can also, make sure you guys just give us a like and follow and all that stuff on Instagram. Make sure you guys check out my new shirt. Just dropped. Extra Cooler finished the design, and I think I gave him the request for the design on Monday. The dude turned around in a couple days, and it's just what I had in mind, if not 1,000 times better. So I'm gonna get those shirts printed. I got some pre-orders already. $20 if you guys see me in person. I will definitely, hopefully, have the shows in October when I'm at Rad Pro in Amesbury, Mass. So if you guys see me, I'll have the shirts, and buy one, support the brand, and trying to get the name out there for ring announcing and all that. So cool to have awesome merch, and it's a shirt that I definitely would wear, and it's like one of those pocket tees with the big design and dessert on the back, which is exactly what you want. So as I mentioned before, Rad Pro Wrestling is my next appearance for ring announcing. So that's going to be in Amesbury, Massachusetts on 10/21. So make sure you guys buy tickets to that. That's a power transfer. It is, we're approaching the end of 1994. So we're approaching 1995. So 3 more shows left in 1994. And then we move towards 1995 in Rad Pro Wrestling. So if you guys are not familiar with Rad Pro and what they do, check them out on IWTV. It is a very fun Chikara type of promotion where everybody that is in that area, mostly the Northeast, have new gimmicks that's different from elsewhere. And it's set in 1994. I'm at Acefield Retro when I'm there. Fred Vernon. So different gimmicks for everybody. There's a milkman. There's a robot. Channing Thomas plays a robot, which is fantastic.
Hell yeah.
It's just so fun. And wrestling's meant to be fun. And it's the most fun I've had in just, expanding sort of your creative energies, and the fans have a great time. And the Massachusetts crowd, shout out to them. They love pro wrestling more so than any market. Just that area of Massachusetts, whether it be Worcester or Amesbury, they're just like, they love independent wrestling and wrestling at large, and they're lively and they're energetic and all that. So shout out to them. I can't wait to get into the building for 10/21. And also, Remarkable Wrestling continues to do their thing. Go to remarkablewrestling.com. Go to the check out tickets for the upcoming shows in November. We don't have the name of the show yet. Of October, we have a show coming up, and it's not announced yet, but some stuff coming on. And if you guys stay tuned to the Instagram at remarkable_wrestling, you'll find out the next events. And if you're looking to become a pro wrestler, announcer, referee, valet, whatever, go to Remarkable Wrestling School. $150 a month. Can't beat the deal. And stay tuned to the Instagram for all that good stuff, and follow the tavern. We got these 3 shows. Shot Nostalgia, we got to mention that as well. Colton made his return to Shot Nostalgia, and we filmed it earlier this week. It's going to be airing tomorrow, Saturday night's main event. Colton, how great was it to talk about Saturday night's main event?
It was so much fun, man. It was great to get back with you and Bellcaster. I've missed being on Shot of Nostalgia. And man, yeah, Saturday night's main event is so much fun to go back through, because I haven't watched all of them, and even the ones that I did watch, I was small when I was watching them, so it's really nice to revisit them with years of wrestling fandom under my belt. And then, yeah, the 2 that we covered this week, kind of the build up for WrestleMania 3. This was a really fun episode. So yeah, man, good to be back in the seat. Good to go 3 wide with you and Mike Bellcaster again.
So for Shot Nostalgia, we have a lot planned. I think we've been pretty transparent about the plan here, and it's 18 episodes deep for this season, which would put us the week before Christmas for this season for Shot Nostalgia season 5. Following that, there might be a 30-week hiatus where there's been requests for the WCW season 1 audio to be dropping. So that will be dropping on all audio every Saturday morning. But that means we're going to be on a hiatus here. But that doesn't mean we're not having the creative juices being pumped in here, thinking about what we're doing next. And I think we already have it written in stone, the NXT takeovers. I think that's been what we're going to do. It's going to take a while to get there. Maybe we'll do overlap. Maybe we'll release both of them in one day. Who knows? Maybe like 10 weeks into this hiatus, we're going to get the itch, and we'll start recording NXT quickly. But absence makes the heart grow fonder. We're going to have a lot of back catalog stuff for you to check out. And this season's not over. We have until December at this point for us to finish this season. And there's a lot of more content, a lot more newsletter. I got the physical copies stacked up over here. My floor of this office is starting to look like Dave Meltzer's floor with paper everywhere, but it's been a lot of fun with the hard copies. It's something that it's a labor of love. And I think that's also the best part about this, that any show can sit there and watch the show, tell you what they thought of it. But the research and the stuff and the passion we put into it by researching the surrounding effects of the things happening in the world around that, and the business side of things is just, an insight that you're not going to get anywhere else. And whether people like or love or hate Dave Meltzer and they don't like to read the newsletter, you can't deny that he was covering wrestling very in depth. And some of the stuff we're talking about is just fascinating to think about where the business was in 1987 and 86. And eventually, I'm reading it for the first time. So it's builds a different perspective, and you're looking at the product different. And I don't think I'll be able to look at WrestleMania 3 the same again because of what we talked about and discussed for the build to it, and understanding really that went into it, that Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan was no guarantee. And we talk about that at length, and who it could have been and what could have been. And we talk about the butterfly effect of where wrestling would be if that match didn't happen.
Yeah, would be a potentially a very different landscape than what we're used to.
So make sure you guys follow at Mold.mania. Vote for him over and over again. Go to all your devices. You guys have multiple devices now. So go to different devices and click on that link. Please, you'll be doing us a favor. And also, you guys follow me at Acefield Retro. And we'll be back next week talking about all the Impact stuff. But until then, we'll catch you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you after a while.